From the Ozark foothills of northeast Arkansas, I'm Carl Richardson, and this is Midnight Frequency Radio. Our guest this evening is Maxim Furek. Mr. Furek is an author and researcher whose work spans psychology, addictions, music journalism, and paranormal culture. His investigations into folklore, true crime, and America's high strangeness have been featured across print and digital media, with a special focus on the Pennsylvania coal fields with what he calls the coal region hoodoo. His academic background includes a master's degree in communications from Bloomberg University and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Aquinas College. Drawing on these disciplines, Maxim examines the psychological and socio-cultural currents behind UFOs, cryptids, hauntings, demonology, music scenes, and media myth-making. Beyond the paranormal, Maxim is also known for documenting the Pennsylvania music history and the rise of AOR bands through the 1970s and 80s, as well as for commentary on Generation X culture, grunge, and the darker side of fame. Good evening, Mr. Furek, and welcome to Midnight Frequency Radio.
Thank you so much, Carl. Thank you for that wonderful intro. That was almost like War and Peace, but thank you. You did a great job with that, and thank you so much for the invitation to Midnight Frequency.
Well, it's an honor to have you here, and I guess the first question is, how did you get involved in the paranormal field with all the other things you had in the fire?
Yeah, well, it was basically a fluke. I mean, I don't know what word you want to put on it, but I never went looking for the paranormal. I had been operating as a rock journalist for a number of years. I had a number of books published, and I consider myself a successful rock journalist. And that, what I mean by that is taking a look at rock music, as a vehicle for that would transform society, and uplift us and give us hope and all that. So I looked at music through a sociological lens and wrote a couple of books. And but in 9 years ago, exactly 2016, I wrote a book on about the Shepton mining disaster of 1963. That took place in northeastern Pennsylvania, and it was probably the most bizarre mining event, certainly that I've researched. But Shepton had elements of out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and afterlife experiences, plus visions of aliens and guardian angels and a dead pope and everything else. So that was 9 years ago, and the Shepton mythology, my first paranormal book, opened up the doors to the paranormal, and I was invited to expos and conferences and podcasts, and it just took off from there. And it wasn't a demographic that I was looking for. It wasn't even a topic that I was looking for, but it sort of found me. And I just love, exploring the realm of the paranormal. It's just the most fascinating and exciting genre that's out there. And, I'm just hoping that I could make a contribution to that genre.
Yeah, who were the most influential people that you've met over your journey into paranormal?
Well, certainly Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I talk about my relationship with Ed and Lorraine in my book, The Smurl Haunting, when Ed and Lorraine came to town. And that's a similar theme as Conjuring Last Rites, that is purportedly about the West Pittston Smurl Haunting. Theirs is the movie was fictionalized. I mean, there was very little that was accurate there. It was a horror movie. It was a fictional horror movie based on the West Pittston, Pennsylvania, event. And but it was just a motion picture for entertainment. My book, The Smurl Haunting, if you want to know about what happened, I mean the truth behind The Conjuring, then read my book, because it goes to the Smurl Haunting and beyond. But certainly Ed and Lorraine Warren were up there. This past summer, I had an opportunity to meet Dan Rivera, who was the chief handler for Annabelle, and that was Friday, July the 11th. To 2025, I met Dan Rivera, and at the in Gettysburg, at the Gettysburg orphanage, we had agreed to do a phone interview on Monday, July the 14th. And Dan passed away the previous night. He passed away on Sunday, the 13th. Again, allegedly from natural causes, if you want to believe that. But the people in the paranormal community that I talk to say, no, there's no such thing as a coincidence. No, take a look at all the things that happened in New Orleans surrounding the Annabelle tour, the Devils on the Run tour. And there's a lot of people that are saying there's something else at play here. Don't use the word coincidence. There were a lot of people, including the psychic Vincent sisters and people like Chris McKenna, Ed and Lorraine's godson, that believe that demonic forces had infested the Annabelle doll, and that may have led to the death of Dan Rivera. So again, it's controversial. People are lining up. Take your pick your sides. I don't care. I think Annabelle had something to do with it, and that's what I write about in my book, The Smurl Haunting. But certainly, Ed and Lorraine Warren were at the top of the list. I was friends with Timothy Green Beckley, Mr. UFO, and he was a bit of a mentor to me early on. And also a guy named Dr. Frederick Santee. He was a white witch. He was the high priest for the Coven of the Cata. And he was a friend of mine. He was my physician. And his coven, located in northeastern Pennsylvania in Walpolapin, was sanctioned. It was initiated by Sybil Leek, the world's most famous witch. And what's interesting, Carl, is that Sybil Leek introduced witchcraft to the world with her books and with her presence and her personality, as Ed and Lorraine Warren introduced demonology to the world through their exploits and their investigations and their books. So both Sybil Leek and Ed and Lorraine Warren are certainly important players in the realm of demonology, and they certainly are in the realm of the paranormal, and they certainly deserve, their place, their chapter in the great book of the paranormal. So I was fortunate to have been friends with Dr. Santee, who taught me much about, the Wicca craft and the left and right pathways, and also to have been friends with Ed and Lorraine Warren, who I met in 1988. They were on a 15-city book tour for a book called The Haunted. So they were, I stayed in touch with them over the years, and they were just great people. I mean, they treated me very well and mentored me. So that was Ed and Lorraine. And I dedicate my book, The Smurl Haunting, to Ed and Lorraine.
Now, Judy Warren wasn't even involved with the Smurls at all, was she?
No, she wasn't. But if you watch the Conjuring Last Rites, it was all about Judy Warren, and the demons were after her and all that. Not true. The only thing that the Conjuring Last Rites got correct, and I could tell you this for a fact because I was there. I mean, West Pittston is in my backyard. It was maybe 30 minutes away from where I live in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. So I was going up there frequently during this frenzy. It was all over the newspapers and the radio, and I would go up there and talk to the neighbors and take pictures. I never knocked on the door of the Smurls. They were under attack. They were under assault by demonic forces, by neighbors that just believed that they were in it for the money, didn't believe them, and also by a media, a paparazzi that was just voracious. They were rapacious. They the Smurl, Jack and Janet Smurl talked about the hundreds of media people that would be calling her, asking for, from all over the world, international reporters asking for an exclusive interview. They were being harassed, and it was really a sad situation. But like I said, the only realism that Conjuring Last Rites had was the frenzy that was happening there, the media frenzy on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. They got that right, and that was true. It was happening, like they said.
Yeah. Were there any similarities between the Smurl haunting and Amityville?
Yeah, I mean, all these haunted houses, all these examples of poltergeist activities, pretty much start off with the same template. The smells, the horrible smells, the grunts. I mean, they have their variations. Sometimes levitations. Um, in both Amityville and Smurl House, rooms that will dip to maybe 30, 40 degrees, even though those rooms are connected to furnaces and to heating systems. So, that happened there at the Smurl haunting. The only difference, I think there's some, and that's a great question, but I compare the Smurl haunting with Amityville, the Hinsdale house, and the Wells house. I take a look at these other haunted houses, these other demonically possessed or infested houses, and I compare them to the Smurl house. A couple things are interesting. The Amityville horror is something that continues to shock us and repulse us. It's sort of like a modern day Cain and Abel. No one can believe that this young man, this 23-year-old Butch DeFeo, would take a rifle and then kill his mother, his father, his two sisters, and his two brothers. He was a rich kid, a wealthy kid. He walked around with thousands of dollars in his pocket. He had everything that a teenager could want. I mean, all the materialistic pleasures and everything. But what's interesting with Butch DeFeo was he claimed that he was possessed by a demon. And the prosecution, and there's a great book called High Hopes. That was the name that they named this place in Amityville before the DeFeos bought it. It's called High Hopes. But Butch DeFeo claimed that he was possessed by a demon. The prosecution had to prove that he wasn't possessed by a demon, but that he was a personality disorder, that he had no empathy for his fellow humans, and also he had a need for immediate gratification. So this is what they had to go and conduct, what played out in the courtroom, which is so interesting. I mean, it was one of the cases. I mean, there's been several others, but with Amityville, they had to prove that it was not demonic possession that made this young man, this 23-year-old young man, kill his family. So that was, and we can't let that go. And if you were to Google, if your listeners were to Google Amityville, you're going to find countless books and motion pictures about Amityville, just because it resonates. It's just like one of the most despicable, stories that we've heard. And but it's also a cottage industry. I mean, people are making money by talking about Amityville. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to say about the Smurl haunting, what makes the Smurl house so unique, is the intensity of violence that we found at the Smurl house in the 80s. And Jack Smurl claimed that he was raped by a female demon, a succubus. And his wife claimed that she was molested by an entity. They did show some of this. They showed Jack in the movie Conjuring Last Rites. They showed Jack levitating and being molested by something. So that came close to being factual. But all of the other things that I saw, and I really need to see Conjuring Last Rites again, just to look for some other things. But but it was not, it wasn't authentic. And it really, I mean, I enjoy the Conjuring franchise, and I've seen all those movies, numerous times, but it just wasn't that good as far as, being a scary horror movie. If your listeners are looking for something that's good, I mean, go see Sinners, go see Bring Her Back, go see Weapons. Those are wonderfully made motion pictures, and and horror. Horror done well is an art form, and certainly Conjuring Last Rites was not an art form. It was just part of the $2.7 billion net that the Conjuring, universe, the multiverse, has raked in. So it's a very successful franchise, and it just And I would ask you this, Carl. Why do you suppose Conjuring is so successful? I mean, what makes it tick? What's the draw? What's the attraction? I mean, you're involved in all of this stuff. What would you be? What's your gut feeling about that?
I don't know. I mean, like you said, a lot of it's not even real in that movie. And I was shaking my head the whole time I was watching it the other day.
Yeah,
But I guess some of the people like that and believe what's being put out there that haven't read the books that tell the true story and everything.
yeah, huh. Yeah. I would think that people are watching it for the entertainment value, not for the not for the educational value. Because there's not too much there. So, you
Yeah,
know,
I don't think I could sit through it again.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well.
off topic, how do you sleep with that painting behind you in the house?
Yeah, that's the nun. And I'll tell you what, when I do my presentations, I bring along the nun and also, hang on, let me get up and show you this. All right. And also,
Ah, little Annie doll. Yeah,
yes, little Annabelle. And this is exactly what the Annabelle doll looked like. When I went, Raggedy Ann, when I went down to Gettysburg in July.
yeah.
And
The Conjuring movies that had that doll that they had, I guess they just did it for effect because it wasn't real.
yeah, correct. Yeah. And then if you watch the Conjuring movies, Annabelle, or the Raggedy Ann doll started to get more demonic looking. And one reason was because they had to make it scarier, because this is very scary. But also, I believe part of it was copyright infringement. Whoever makes these Raggedy Ann dolls, probably was going to go and sue them for whatever. So I think they backed off on that and just made Annabelle look different. But I'll say this: when I was in Gettysburg, Annabelle was in this 5 foot wooden structure, like a cage. It had the Lord's Prayer affixed to the back. It had 3 crosses for the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. It was infused with holy water and holy oil. And there was a window there that was taken from a consecrated church. But they kept Annabelle in there, and supposedly there was supposed to be a priest there at all times, Father Bob. But I'll tell you this, no matter what the New England Society for Psychic Research says, and they're the ones who took Annabelle on the road, there was no Father Bob there on Friday, July the 11th, when I was there.
Yeah.
Father Bob allegedly was out of country, so it's possible that he wasn't even there for the other 2 days. Father Bob wasn't there in Gettysburg, but I'll tell you who was. 1,240 other people, including myself and my wife, paying $40 each for the privilege of seeing this Raggedy Ann doll. That's Carl. That's close to $50,000 in Gettysburg alone.
Wow.
50K, and forget about New Orleans, West Virginia, San Antonio, and all the other places that they took. The New England Psychic Society took Annabelle. They were making money. They were probably making 50,000, give or take, each place they went. Despite the fact that Lorraine Warren wanted Annabelle to stay in Monroe, Connecticut, at the Warrens Occult Museum, and their son-in-law, who's a Tony Spira, I believe, was part of the group that decided to take Annabelle on the road, and have to live with the fact that I mean, who knows what the real reason is, the real cause of Dan Rivera's death. But if you are somewhat interested, if you're a researcher of the paranormal, you have to consider the fact that there were demonic energies from Annabelle. And if you believe in a realm of demonology, we know that demonic forces can infest people, places, or things, like the Smurl house or the Smurls themselves. So, the death of Dan Rivera is unfortunate. I don't think that anybody's celebrating his death. I think we're all mourning it, but I think we need to just, keep our voices loud, saying, "Be careful." And they're taking Annabelle out on the road again.
Of
It's
course.
again, and I just think this is horrible. And And again, it's all about making money. It's not about anything else. It's not about educating us or warning us about the realm of demonology. So,
Yes, sir.
you know, but anyway, I don't mean to pontificate and rant, but it makes me angry that the incentive for this is money and nothing else.
Yeah, well, I understand where you're coming from. We're going about 23 after the hour. I'm going to go ahead and run my first break.
Sure.
And if you need to refresh your water or coffee, and it's about a 5 minute and 20-second break.
Good. I'll heat my tea. Okay, very good. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
This is Dark Matter News. I'm Joshua Stark. Japan has begun clinical trials on a universal artificial blood that could work for all blood types and last up to 2 years in storage. The project, led by Professor Hiromi Sakai at Nara Medical University, is seen as a major step towards solving chronic blood shortages and the limits of traditional transfusions. In the first phase, researchers administered between 100 and 400 milliliters of the synthetic blood to 16 healthy volunteers. The next stage will test how well it performs in carrying oxygen and supporting patients during medical procedures. The artificial blood is created from expired donor blood, with hemoglobin extracted and sealed inside microscopic lipid shells known as hemoglobin vesicles. These particles imitate red blood cells but lack blood type markers, making them universally compatible and reducing the risk of contamination. Early trials in Japan produced only mild short-term side effects such as fever and skin irritation. Scientists caution, though, that more testing is needed to confirm whether this product can match real blood in oxygen delivery, safety, and stability. Some researchers have raised concerns that relying on donor-derived hemoglobin may still pose limits on supply and possible infection risks. Future generations of the product could be made using recombinant or lab-grown proteins to overcome that issue. Catch up with us at darkmatternews.com.
The word amateur, it can mean a lack of skill, but today's amateur radio operators provide skilled emergency communications when the chips are down simply because they want to be of service to the community. Dependable, reliable, free of charge. Amateur radio emergency services operators are amateurs in the best sense of the word. Join us.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like,
rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
By my political beliefs.
I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up,
I want to be offended by my coworkers
and walk around the office
on eggshells
and have my words policed
by HR. Words like
grandfather,
peanut gallery,
long time no see,
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
and do workplace sensitivity training
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist. I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
Hi, this is Jessica with C. Crane. Tired of spotty radio reception and static? C. Crane CC Wi-Fi 3 Internet Radio offers a crystal clear solution with audio guaranteed to outperform any smartphone speaker. With an internet connection, tune in to over 30,000 radio stations from around the world, all conveniently accessible without needing any apps, providing personal information, or additional monthly subscriptions. Enjoy complete privacy with no microphone or eavesdropping. The CC Wi-Fi 3 boasts a user-friendly interface with a full-sized remote for easy control. It also doubles as a Bluetooth speaker for your favorite music and podcasts. Ready to upgrade your listening experience? You can get the CC Wi-Fi 3 by calling C. Crane at 800-522-8863 or by visiting us online at ccrane.com. Once again, that's CCRANE.com.
Welcome back to Midnight Frequency Radio and our guest, Maxim Furek. Did the Warrens share anything with you in their personal experience with demonic possession?
Yeah, pretty much that's what we talked about. Like I said, I had met them for the first time in 1988. They were embarking on a 15-city tour to promote the book, The Haunted. And that was interesting because The Haunted was, it was about the Smurl haunting there in West Pittston. It was written by a guy named Robert Curran, Curran, and he was an award-winning journalist up in northeastern Pennsylvania. It was co-written by Jack and Janet Smurl and also by Ed and Lorraine Warren, but their contributions to the book, I think, were minimal and also scattered. Jack and Janet Smurl were not journalists; they weren't writers. They were people that were being terrorized, and so what they gave Robert Curran to work with, it was just like basic text. You could tell that the book was disjointed because there were like separate parts of it. And by the same token, Ed and Lorraine were not writers. All the books, the 5, 6, 7 books that were attributed to the Warrens were ghostwritten by other people. So they also weren't writers. But anyway, when I met them in 1988, they were embarking on this 15-city tour to promote The Haunted. And I took pictures with them that are in the Smurl haunting, the book, and I talked to Ed and Lorraine about how they would go and do battle with these demons, how they would approach this, and all of this was according to the Warrens, from a Christian standpoint. They were the Warrens were devout Catholics, and they would use holy water and the crucifix. Ed would call upon to do battle. He would get into the form, the spirit of Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior, Saint Michael the Archangel, and also Padre Pio, and he would invoke their spirit to do battle with these demons. He was an exorcist, I think, a self-taught demonologist and exorcist. But even with what they did at the Smurl haunting, it was, Ed's efforts weren't effective. He wasn't able to drive out the demons. And they brought in a number of other priests. The priests from northeastern Pennsylvania came there and house sat. They did blessings. They did exorcisms. Every diocese has an exorcist in the diocese. Nothing was working. So Ed and Lorraine brought in Father McKenna, Robert McKenna, who was what's called a rogue priest. And McKenna was there at the Smurl haunting 3 times. He performed 3 exorcisms and could not chase out the demon. So at the final result, the final gasp, the Bishop of Scranton, Bishop Timlin, brought in Father Alphonse Treebolt, and he came in down from New York State and St. Bonaventure University, and Father Treebolt, who is the real hero of the story, and was not included in the book, The Haunted, or the motion picture, or Conjuring Last Rites. And that's the real sin right there. But he was the one who performed 4 exorcisms, Father Treebolt, and he finally was able to cast out the demon. Now, I do want to say this about Father Treebolt. He was successful with the Smurl haunting, but not with the Hinsdale house. And he had gone to the Hinsdale house in New York and tried to cleanse that house, that very evil house, and he was not able to. He told the people living there, he said, leave immediately, take your belongings, don't tell anyone where you're going, and just leave. And Father Treble said that this place, the Hinsdale house, was a portal to hell. It was a gateway to hell. There was nothing good that could happen there. And what's interesting, and this place is in Western Pennsylvania, the owner, now you could spend the night there at the Hinsdale house for a fee. It's almost like a bed and breakfast. And, I can't think of a more foolish thing for anybody to do. I certainly would not do that. And I would warn people about, a venture like that. So that's the Hinsdale house in Western Pennsylvania. That was the one that Father Treeboat was not able to go and cleanse.
You're one of the last paranormal researchers to speak with Dan Rivera before he died.
Yeah, I know. And what do you think about that?
It's spooky.
Yeah. I'll tell you, there's a war going on right now, and and I'm really reaching a point where I'm really ready to start to do battle, but I don't want to do that. But I have a chapter in my book called "The Death of Dan Rivera," and we take a look at Annabelle, the Devils on the Run tour. How they took Annabelle in 2025 out of Monroe, Connecticut, and took Annabelle on the road. Dan Rivera was the chief Annabelle handler. He was a former Methodist guy, and he converted to Catholicism, and he was walking on clouds. I mean, he professed his Christianity, his love of God, his belief in God, all this. All these people there with this New England psychic research, the people that I met in Gettysburg at the orphanage, they all were the same way. They believed that the power of the devil is great, but the power of God is even greater. And that was their theme, and that is their might. This is the sword that they wield. I met him on the July the 11th. We had a wonderful conversation. I got there they invited me, and I was at the head of the line and had a chance to go, and Dan greeted me, and we had a chance to have a really good conversation, go deep. I was telling him about the book, about the Smurl haunting that I was researching, and we started to talk about Ed and Lorraine and about some of the things pertaining to the Smurl house. Again, what happened was we agreed to do a phone conversation, a phone interview on Monday, July the 14th. This is when Dan Rivera was going to go back to, I'm not sure if he was from Monroe, Connecticut, or one of those towns around Monroe, but he was going back there, and we were going to talk on Monday. And then I got a call from a friend that said, did you hear about the paranormal researcher from Gettysburg that died? And I thought it was one of the other gentlemen that I had met and interacted with. And when I Googled it, here it was Dan Rivera. I was shocked. I still am shocked. And now we're having some of the people from the New England group saying that some people are celebrating Dan's death. Some people are capitalizing and making money on his death, and all of this horrible, horrible stuff that isn't true. This is only going to go so far before somebody starts to litigate. But Dan may have died because of demonic energies attributed to Annabelle, and I would like this New England group of psychic researchers to prove that it was only natural causes. I'd like to see their accounting for that. When Annabelle went to New Orleans for those 2 or 3 days, there were 3 things that happened, and that was all over the internet in, I think it was May of 2025. There was a fire in the plantation, the largest plantation in Louisiana, a sugarcane plantation, burned down. The prison break, 11 inmates from a New Orleans jail broke out during the same period when Annabelle was there. And then also the house that belonged to the voodoo queen, Marie Lafay, was burned. So all of that was attributed to to Annabelle. and it didn't happen in San Antonio or West Virginia, but it happened in New Orleans. And then also the 911 lines were tied up in Gettysburg, and this is pretty bizarre, but this is something that happened after the fact. So, you could Google Gettysburg Orphanage, Dan Rivera, and there's just a million things that pop up. It's incredible. And but every podcast that I'm on, people say, "Well, what do you think caused his death?" And I said that I'm not sure. I don't know, but I think Annabelle has something to do with it. And so that's my belief.
Yeah. One of your more fascinating chapters in the Smurl haunting talks about Pope John Paul II and his exorcism college.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate some more on that?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, if I start with the premise, with my book, whether or not, there's a debate whether or not evil exists, whether or not the devil exists. And so I am of the belief that there is the evil does exist. It manifests in many different forms and shapes, and the devil does exist. I think the devil is a great deceiver. He or she is a deceptor. The devil wants us to think that they don't exist, that it's just a myth created by our parents, by our caregivers, by the church, to keep us in line. If you don't go to church, the devil's going to get you. If you don't say your prayers, you're going to go to hell. I mean, we've heard this, since we were kids. But I believe that that evil does exist and the devil does exist, and so did Pope John Paul II, and that's why what he did was he rewrote the rite of exorcism, and that's RITE. After 400 years, he rewrote it and updated it. He believed that evil exists in modern times, and he organized a school of exorcism where priests, 132 priests from 30 different countries came, I believe it was to the Vatican, to learn this medieval, ancient rite of exorcism to cast out these demons. I have a chapter, so that's in my book, and I talk about Pope John Paul II, but I also have a chapter called The Apostles of Exorcism, and one of them is Father Amorth, and Father Amorth was the Vatican's exorcist. He completed over thousands and thousands of exorcisms. And there was a motion picture with Russell Crowe called The Pope's Exorcist.
I have seen that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it's very well done. I think the setting was in Spain, and there was demonic infestation there. And so Russell Crowe had to go there and do battle. But I mean, it was really well done, and it was authentic. I mean, I liked it. Father Amorth said this, though. When people show up and claim that they are possessed by demons, the church has to make a determination whether or not these people are actually possessed by demons or if they are mentally ill. And they have to determine whether or not they're schizophrenic or have bipolar or Tourette syndrome or whatever. Father Amorth said that 2% of the people only are the ones that are possessed. And these are the ones that he deals with. I have a chapter called The 2%, and these are the cases. These are the infamous cases of demonic possessions. Just a fascinating topic. I have a chapter called The Apostles of Exorcism, and the first one that I list is Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And Jesus was the one who was able to cast out the demons, and that's all over the New Testament. But he was able to teach his apostles to also do the rite of exorcism if they did it in Christ's name and in his spirit. And that was the sort of the formula for casting out demons. And this is what the exorcists do today. They do it in the name of Christ and in his spirit. And the power comes from a higher authority, not from us, but from up above, from God. So all things through God. So this is a spiritual thing. It's a God thing. And I know there's people out there that, are not believers, but that's fine. I'm not trying to convince anybody over to my side. I happen to believe, that there's demonic forces out there, and I try to keep my distance. I am being warned continuously by my friends, my born again fundamentalist and evangelical Christian friends who just warn me not to get too close to the flame. And I don't think I do. I think I'm keeping my distance. I don't dance with the devil, and I don't ask for favors from the devil. I don't, I'm very, 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 I'm apprehensive, and I'm cautious. So, that's what I do. But the book, the Smurl haunting, if you're interested at all in the realm of demonology and the rite of exorcism and all of that, my book takes a look at that, using the Smurl haunting sort of as a pivot point, and then bouncing the Amityville Horror and the Hinsdale House and the Wells House against that, comparing and contrasting, and looking at history's greatest exorcists and what they did and what they were noted for, and looking at movies like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Babies, things like that, that brought that realm of demonology into our public awareness. And so as Hollywood did that, Ed and Lorraine Warren were doing the same thing through their lectures and their books. They were the ambassadors of demonology. They educated us, and many people, disliked the Warrens because of their success. They were making $5,000 back in the day when 5,000 was a whole lot of money, but they were making $5,000 a seminar, doing close to 1,000 seminars on demonology on college campuses. So they were making money, and they were, on talk shows all the time. And, and so people use that, say that because they were capitalistic and because they were successful capitalists, that somehow that taints, their credibility. And it really doesn't. They were, if the critics were able to be as successful as Ed and Lorraine Warren, then they would be doing the same thing. Not everybody has the talent. Not everybody gets the calling, and they did. And again, they were as significant ambassadors as was Sybil Leek, in her own realm. So Ed and Lorraine Warren were important people in the world of the paranormal.
What are your thoughts about Jason Anson's 1977 nonfiction book, The Amityville Horror?
Yeah, I read that book. When I was writing the Smurl haunting, I read that book twice, and I said I also read High Hopes, which was really well done. It was like a legal thriller. But Jay Anson's book wasn't that good, and I say this because he wrote this listening to something like, I don't know, I think it was 48 hours of tape from George and Kathy Lutz. And remember, after Ronnie DeFeo after he murdered his family, then that house, that High Hopes, was up for sale, and George and Kathy Lutz got it for $80,000, which was a real steal. This beautiful mansion in Long Island, in the ritzy part, the affluent part of town. But they only stayed there for, I think it was 28 days, driven out by demons. And so anyway, they they tape recorded their accounts of that. Jay Anston wrote about it, and the Amityville Horror became a million seller. There was motion pictures, and then follow-ups and prequels and everything else. And just amazing, when I was researching this, amazing how many books have been written about Amityville. But the book was scattered because Jay Anson didn't really have a whole lot to work with. And then, there was one chapter towards the end that I thought he really got it right, but he was speaking in another tone, another cadence, another meter, and I think that was his true voice. I think the rest of the book was just based on, the tape recordings of George and Kathy Lutz. But certainly just a house that was possessed, the flies, the talking pig that the little girl saw, just all kinds of bizarre things that almost a typical house with demonic infestation.
Yeah. Do you think George and Kathy Lutz were telling the truth or just trying to make money?
No, well, I think they were telling the truth, but I think they were also trying to make money. There was money in this, and certainly Jay Anston wrote the book that sold millions, and then there was the movie based on his book. So, yeah, there was money to be made, and I think they made some of it, but I don't think that was their motivation. I think that they were really terrorized. I think there was a demonic infestation there, and again, you could believe them or not, and a lot of people don't. I believe in the universal law of 90. In any given situation, you're going to have 30% of the people that are true believers. You're going to have 30% of the people that don't believe any of it, and then 30% that could care less. They're just on the bias. They could be swayed either way. So, it's just like Ed and Lorraine, but Ed and Lorraine Warren, it's not 30, 30, and 30. It's more, a lot of people do not like Ed and Lorraine Warren, not just because of their success, but a lot of people felt that they hid behind their Catholicism, that they hid behind, the God and Christianity, that, that they made things up, that they, exaggerated. And all of that, but I was, I consider myself their friends, and again, they certainly took their time with me and mentored me, and I stayed in touch with them after 1988. I would call them up, and I would talk to Ed and ask him questions. Lorraine was a pet lover, an animal lover. She had a pet rooster that you could hear, and it was really kind of funny. But they were nice people, and I think maybe I like to think that Ed saw maybe a little bit of him in me. My curiosity, my energy, my excitement, all that. I think, but one of my fondest memories is hanging out in July, I think it was, on the streets of Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, a very nice touristy town. That's where they were doing their presentations, and hanging out with them on the sidewalk and in the heat, summer heat, talking about demonic possession and talking about the power of God and the power of evil. And it was just like, I wish I could go back in time, Carl, and and ask them the same questions, but go deeper and further and, be more probing. But that's one of my favorite memories. And I am indeed blessed that I knew the Warrens, and with the Smurl haunting, I mean, I felt that something was channeled through me to write this book. West Pittston is in my backyard, so I was there all the time. I met Ed and Lorraine when they were on their book tour for The Haunted, and then I went down to Gettysburg this year and met Dan Rivera, which is a big part of this whole thing. So I don't know. I mean, I was put there. I mean, I don't think it was a coincidence that I went to see Annabelle and met Dan just before he died, and I don't think it was a coincidence that that I happened to meet and became friends with Ed and Lorraine Warren. So, but I think that I was meant to write this book, and I'm qualified to write it, and my book comes a hell of a lot closer to the truth than Conjuring Last Rites ever could. The book is totally fictionalized. Like you indicated, Judy Warren never stepped foot inside the Smurl house, and neither did Tony Spira, her husband, the son-in-law. So, so that part was just fictionalized. One thing that they had in the movie that was interesting, Judy Warren was there when Simon, the Smurl's German Shepherd, was levitated, and what really happened was Don Smurl, who had to be, I don't know, I think maybe 18 at the time, I'm not sure, but watched the dog Simon levitate, and then it was flung across the room against the wall. And the theories are plentiful, but either she was hallucinating and didn't really see that, or that's what she saw, or it was demonic forces that lifted up Simon and levitated him. Or, and this is the interesting one, that Don Smurl was manifesting some psychokinetic energies. And we know about these energies from Stephen King. His books like Carrie, Firestarter, The Shining, they talk about these young people, typically female adolescents, that have these energies, these psychic energies, and they don't know how to utilize them. And there's a lot of anger and angst. And this could have been what happened with the dog Simon, that it was Dawn that lifted that collie, levitated it, and threw it across the room. In the movie, it was Judy Warren, but again, that's another, never happened. Another bit of fantasy. They could have made that movie a lot better if they would have had an interplay between the church, not believing that the house was infested, versus priests that believed that it was. I mean, that would have made it for a better and more accurate story, but no, they didn't. So I think that the Conjuring Last Rites was a bit of a letdown as far as the storyline. Entertaining, yes, but not a very good plot.
Yes, sir. I'm going to go ahead and run my last break, and then we can come back and close out.
I can see her lying back in her satin dress, in a room where you do what you don't confess.
In Spring City, Pennsylvania, the former Pennhurst State School and Hospital, closed in 1986, has become a magnet for paranormal enthusiasts, haunted house tourism, and dark history tours. Once a psychiatric facility with a troubled past spanning 8 decades, it now draws hundreds each year to explore what many call one of America's most haunted asylums. One visitor, Steve Roberts, admits he's uncertain about ghosts, but after joining a paranormal gathering at Pennhurst, he says the unnerving experiences made skepticism harder to maintain. Others report shadowy figures, electromagnetic fluctuations, and sudden cold spots in spaces now used for ghost hunts. The site hosts Paracon events, combining expert panels and night investigations, as well as overnight tours that let thrill seekers roam 4 floors and underground tunnels after dark. The building's legacy is steeped in allegations of neglect, poor conditions, and mistreatment of mentally ill residents. Organizers aim to balance thrill and respect. Daytime historic tours emphasize the institution's controversial medical practices, while nighttime attractions lean into the supernatural. Recent changes include collaborating with disability and mental health advocates to reshape how the story is told. Today, Pennhurst survives both as a haunted attraction and a living museum. That's it for Dark Matter News. Catch up with us on the Midnight Frequency Facebook page. From Memphis, Tennessee, I'm Joshua Stark. Join Carl Richardson and Midnight Frequency this Halloween night at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern for Ozark Ghost Stories. Call in and tell us about your experiences with the beyond. That's right, ghost stories and paranormal experiences as only you can tell them. Call-in information will be posted at www.midnightfrequency.net. Join us and explore the unknown, if you dare.
The CC Skywave SSB-2 is a Swiss Army knife of portable radios. The Skywave SSB-2 has wide and accurate band coverage in a small size, which makes it an excellent travel and emergency radio. Single sideband is a reliable way to get long-range information after an earthquake or hurricane when normal communications are down. The SSB tuning is accurate to 10 Hz resolution. It also covers civilian aviation, VHF, with 10 aviation memories that can continuously scan for activity. It also covers AM, FM, and weather with alert. To get your CC Skywave SSB2, call us at 1-800-522-8863 or visit us on the web at ccrane.com. Once again, that's CCRANE.com. Welcome back to Midnight Frequency Radio and our guest, Maxim Furek. Mr. Furek, how do you think the rest of the world views the Warrens?
Yeah, I think they have their critics. Certainly I talked about a lot of people I think are jealous because they were so financially successful, and they use that, as a means of castigating them, which I just don't think is fair. But the other thing, though, is that I think as Christians, I think that Ed and Lorraine looked at the world through a black and white lens, and just a lens of good, either good or evil. And it's something that pagans and Wiccans don't adhere to. Certainly, pagans that I know believe that there's demonic energies, there's dark energies around us, and that we need to coexist with those energies. And it's sort of like that Jungian shadow self, so those dark forces, those dark energies are out there, but, they live amongst us, they live within us, we need to coexist with them. I mean, and, look at ourselves. I mean, we're not all good and we're not all evil. We're a mix, hopefully, of, more of one than the other. But anyway, that was another thing, that there's other, certainly pagans that I know are highly critical of Ed and Lorraine Warren and other, Christian demonologists, just for their taking a all or nothing stance. So, the world doesn't view them with a whole lot of kindness and respect. And again, despite that, the Conjuring franchise is the most successful horror franchise in history. $2.7 billion net for those 9 motion pictures, which included, breakaway films like The Nun, and also the breakaway like Annabelle the Doll. And there'll be more. There'll be prequels. And I believe Netflix is having another Conjuring, series out there. So I think the Conjuring is going to be around with us for a long time. And my book, The Smurl Haunting, which just seems to, to fit in there seamlessly. Which just, our timing was right. Our book came out, I think it was like 3 weeks before September 5th, when Conjuring Last Rites came out. So we, beat this out of the gate by quite a bit. And but again, I tell people, if you want the true story about the Smurl House and about the realm of demonology, read my book. It's getting powerful reviews. We've gotten reviews all over, Great Britain and Canada, and it's just like an amazing thing. And I'm just so glad, because it's only been out for, I think, a couple of months, but we're doing well. And Anxiety Press, wants to go and do another one, but I don't know. I think I just want to ride with this one and see where this takes us. But it's a great book, and I would also request that your readers, if you do purchase The Smurl Haunting, please be so kind as to place a review on Amazon. Those reviews are the best thing you can do, on Amazon to help us authors. I mean, just does something to the whole, the whole system. I mean, just helps us immensely. So if you could leave a review, good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. I'd certainly appreciate it.
Do you have any other major projects that are in the works or any new books?
Yeah, we have a book called The Paranormal Apocalypse. Is This How It Ends? And that's published by Hangar One. And we're getting ready. It's been published, and we're getting ready to launch a massive promotional effort to get the word out about paranormal apocalypse. Is this how it ends? And we take a look at the end times. We take a look at the eschatologists who study the end times and the four horsemen of the apocalypse and the seven seals and all that. And the question is, when is the world going to end, and how's it going to end? And so I take a look at those fears. I look at the possibilities. I look at the prophets who have talked about when the world was going to end, and it's a pretty good read. Hangar One is excited about this one.
I guess I can let you get on with your evening, and I've really enjoyed this interview and the topics we covered, and I may ask you back in the future to cover some other topics.
Oh, Carl, that would be great. And again, if your listeners are interested in contacting me, they could check out my website, which is www.maximfurek.com. So maximfurek.com, and the books are there. And there's a place where they could go and contact me, if they would want a signed copy of the book. So that would be great.
I also have all that information on my site, so they can also go there and link directly to you.
Very good. Well, thank you for having me on Midnight Frequency. This has been a real pleasure, and I wish you continued success on your podcast. This has been great.
Well, I appreciate it. I know I'm no Art Bell, but I do my best. Of course, tonight you could hear I'm a little choked up. They're burning rice fields here. So I apologize for that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carl, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yes, sir. And you have a good evening. Thank you, sir.
Okay.